Welcome to the Labyrinth. I'm your host Pratham Padav. My guest today is Jayant Bhandari. He is a frequent guest of the Labyrinth. He is an investor, entrepreneur, writer, and speaker. He is a critique of India, of Indians, of the Indian government, and a lot of his criticisms are logical and rational. Do watch the podcast till the end. Judge him however you want, but keep an open mind. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. Jayant, welcome back to the Labyrinth. How are you?
I'm very well, Pratham, and thanks very much for having me again.
Okay, so are you excited about the upcoming Indian elections?
Yes and no. It doesn't really matter to me. I think India is on a downward slope, and it doesn't matter who comes to rule the country. But it will be very nice to have the BJP lose election if that happens. I'm really looking forward to that, but I don't think it will change anything to do with India. Because we have chosen a few things within the society that is going to mean that India will continue to degrade, irrespective of which party is in power.
Yeah, previously in the previous two national elections, I did vote and I voted for the party that I considered as the lesser of two evils. But in the upcoming elections, I will not be voting at all. I don't see the point of voting anymore. And if I accidentally step into a voting booth, it will be for Nota. I think that's the decision that a lot of rational Indians are moving towards.
Yeah, I fully agree with that because all of them are trying to win elections by demagoguery. There is no public policy. There's no rational thinking. There's no vision for the future of the country. Everyone just wants to win elections, and that's it. That's where it everything starts and ends for them.
Uh, what are the possibilities that you think could manifest once this elections is over?
If the BJP comes to power, it will be more and more Hindutva, more and more mafia raj, more and more corruption. Corruption has grown by leaps and bounds under the control of the BJP. Um, uh, I hear from, corruption has become centralized under BJP. It has become institutionalized under the BJP, but it has grown significantly under them. But also this very raw, rude thinking that has come to exist in India because of the BJP will gain power. And this raw and rude and very base instinct driven thinking that came into existence because of, partly because of this Ram Mandir temple issue. But this has been the election ploy of the BJP to fanaticize Indians into voting for them. So if the BJP wins, you will have more and more fanaticism. Uh, I don't know how much more corruption can grow because corruption is truly as much as is possible for a society. But if Congress wins or AAP wins or any other party wins, it will be about freebies. And Congress, when Congress was ruling the country, they used to pander to the Muslim vote. They used to pander to the swing votes. So they were demagogues as well. And when I look at Congress party today, there's no leadership left in that party. I see really no one in that party. But at the same time, in the BJP, I see no leadership. Uh, Modi is just a face. Modi looks like a strong face of the party, but he doesn't really understand much. Imagine that this is one of those very rare prime ministers who has never given a, a, an interview with journalists, an unscripted interview. He does not address the journalists, he does not address the people unless everything is scripted for him. So we really don't have leadership left in India. What comes after Modi will be far worse than Modi is.
Yeah, I agree with you. Modi, tries to portray himself as a strong man, but I've never seen him talking to a genuine reporter or he goes on podcasts and interviews where the host is obviously a bootlicker kind of a person. Why do you think he's such a coward?
Well, it is not necessarily cowardice. It has more to do with lack of intelligence. He just doesn't know what is being asked. I remember that the last unscripted interview he ever tried to give was with Karan Thapar, and he started stammering. He did not know how to respond to Thapar, and he moved away. And that was probably the last one he did, and that was before he became the prime minister of the country. So I don't really think he is intelligent. I don't really think he understands the country. Um, I have a very negative view of him. He was able to win elections just because of one thing: he is ruthless. He is prepared to compromise everything for power. He compromised his family. He will happily compromise with the country for power, which is the only thing that matters to him. And once you are, so power hungry, the end goal is so clear to you that you can actually get there, because there are not many people in the world who are that ruthless. He is ruthless.
Why are Modi Bhakts so stubborn? Why do they worship him like a god, despite there being a lot of evidence that he has failed on a lot of grounds, and not just within India but also outside India, which I find very ironic. At least within India, when not so educated people worship Modi, I understand, but there are people in Canada, in India, living a high quality life, walking in brilliant footpaths, enjoying being in a first world country, but they still worship Modi, which to me looks very ungrateful.
See, Pratham, that is exactly my problem with India. Indians do not have a moral fabric. They are not rational people. They are emotionally driven people. It does not matter whether it's Modi or not. I remember exactly the same thing happened during when Rajiv Gandhi came into power. People were going absolutely crazy about him. They thought that because of Rajiv Gandhi, the country would change completely. The same thing happened when Atal Bihari Vajpayee came into power. The same thing happened when Manmohan Singh came into power. So this is just a continuation of the same thing, that Indians are prone to be hysterical because they are not rooted to reason. They are irrational and they are rooted to emotions. They are emotionally driven people. You can drive them into any direction you want to, as long as you play with their emotions rightly. uh, so that's what happened. That's what's happening today. The only difference is that WhatsApp did not exist during the times of Manmohan Singh and earlier times. So now, because of WhatsApp, we have all these crazy things getting forwarded to people about the history, about the temples, about things that never happened. And we have come to believe in the mythical past of India, when India was apparently the richest country on the planet. People, there were rivers of honey and milk flowing in the country, which never was the case. But we have come to believe those things because of WhatsApp, because WhatsApp has this capability to bring a more of mass formation. Same thing happened with, if you remember, during Ganpati. Ganpati was drinking milk all across the country. And so Indians are very prone to hysteria, and that is why at the root is the problem, which is Indians. And irrespective of who comes to power, India's future is, from what I see, horrible.
Okay. Would you say this is partially the fault of income inequality? Because there are a lot of poor people, like people who spit pan and people who misbehave. I judge them, but I don't judge them too harshly, not as harshly as I judge the rich people who irrationally support Modi, because at least the poor people have an excuse for doing stupid things. They don't have resources and they don't have a chance to get educated or to become more intelligent.
Well, so this is the problem with India, Pratham. I go to China very often. I go to East European countries quite often, and I go to Latin America as well. What I have seen is that when people in those countries become richer, they become more tolerant. They want to help their countries. They want to. They have more compassion for the little guy. But the exact opposite happens in India. The more rich they become, the more money minded they become, the less interested they are in the little guy. The reason why India does not have moral fabric cannot be attributed to the fact that they are poor people. The more rich they become, the more sadistic and power hungry and money minded they become. And that is why the richer it has become, the more educated it has become. Culturally, the more degraded it has become. Very ironically, but this is the causality in India and a lot of third world countries that I have seen. But particularly with India, this is a really shameful situation. This is Pratham. I don't know how much interactions you have with the public servants, but these guys might be making lakhs of rupees in bribes. But if they want a taxi, they want you to pay that 200 rupees for to him for it. They are so stingy and money minded whenever, even though they are overflowing with cash.
Yeah, I I don't understand them at all. Uh, so going in a slightly different direction, Narayan Murthy, the head of Infosys, made a statement few months ago that Indians should work 70 hours a week to turn our country into a developed nation like Japan or Korea. I'm of course paraphrasing him. Does this statement hold some truth, or is it pure nonsense?
Um, I don't know why he said that, but over a period of time, I have lost a lot of respect for him and his wife. All the dramas that these people are doing. It seems to me that he wants to position his wife to be the president of the country. The advertisements that are coming out from Infosys are absolutely ridiculous. They are totally woke and they are cringeworthy advertisements. So I don't know his personal philosophy properly. I used to like him from the fact that I thought he was a down to earth guy, but with time it has become apparent that they don't really have ideas of their own. They go with the flow of wokeness or whatever gets them approval by the society and the government. Um, 70 hours work is not a problem. I work probably more than that, but I work those hours because I really enjoy it. My work is pleasure for me. My work is peace for me. And I cannot contemplate enjoying anything outside my work. And I think people should do what they really enjoy so that what they derive pleasure from, peace from, and income from are pretty much the same. So I have no problems working longer hours, but it has to be a bottom up issue. You cannot tell people to work 70 hours because it can be extremely tiring to work 70 hours if you're not motivated enough. It has to come from within.
Right. Uh, I agree with that, and the reason why I brought that up along with the whole income inequality thing is because Narayan Murthy also gifted 240 crores worth of Infosys shares to his 4-month-old grandson. So that I wish he had instead given that to his employees, which would have then motivated them to work even harder. Because you brought the fact about the little guy, as rich get richer in India, they forget to reward their employees. Rather, they transfer crores of shares to their 4-month-old grandson. In a fair free market, you would get what you deserve. But here I feel like the people who are putting in the hard work are not getting what they deserve. Meanwhile, a 4-month-old grandson get 240 crores worth of shares just for being born. That seems very anti-egalitarian.
Well, I have no problems with. I don't see that as an issue of being anti-egalitarian. It's his money. He made that money. I think he has all the rights to that money. He can do whatever he wants. But he is going to spoil his grandkid. I have known many rich people who give too much of material comfort to their children and grandchildren, And those children grow up to be passionless, visionless, because they would have always had everything they wanted in life. The worst thing that can ever happen to you is to have access to everything you want, because then you simply don't have any drive left within you. And the universe is very a tough place to be in. You go on a hike, you stumble, you break your bones, there are many things that happen in real life. You have to sweat it out. You go to the gym, you have to sweat it out. So to achieve anything in life, um, you have to be capable of suffering. And I think a lot of religions, all the religions actually, particularly Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, believed in going through suffering, because not because they, I think, not necessarily because they want you to suffer, but they want you to become capable of suffering so that you can do the right thing when the time comes, rather than shirk away from what is required of you. Um, so I think the capability and the muscle to suffer when the time comes is extremely important. And if you are overflowing with money, if you're overflowing with servants and chauffeurs and maids and all the material comforts of the world, you become intellectually lazy and you don't really have this capability to suffer. And I think that's a necessary training everyone should go through.
You said that Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism teaches about suffering and the lessons that one can gain about suffering. Does Hinduism have similar lessons, or do Hindus fail to learn those lessons?
I don't see any of those lessons in Hinduism, Pratham. I have read a lot of scriptures. I have read Gita, Mahabharata, Ramayana. I knew everything at one point of time, all the relationships within all these people, and I read these things from multiple sources. But at the same time, I don't think Indian scriptures give you the moral message that the Bible gives you or the Ten Commandments give you. We don't Indians don't think in terms of right and wrong. Indians think in terms of might is right. So if you go to a Hindu temple, there's no I have never seen any requirement for you to abstain from something, or everything is based on materialism. You promise to give money to the god to get some material benefits in the future, or to save you from some problems. So I don't really think Hinduism has those virtues that it wants to inculcate into Hindus. It's a religion of celebration. It's a religion where you go and have fun, sing some hymns, and go back home. But you don't necessarily go there to learn either about discipline or about virtues and sins.
Huh. But I'm sure the comment section will be flooded with a lot of disagreements about this.
I,
But
I might I
the
might I might add, Pratham, that what I understand happened was that when the British were ruling the country, they wanted to make people see virtues, and they thought it was the best thing for them. The best way for them to see virtues and understand the concept of right and wrong was through their own scriptures. Now, virtually everything to do with history of India was discovered by the British, and this sounds mind-boggling to many people. But the ancient scriptures of India were forgotten by Indians. Some of the best temples that survived were forgotten by Indians, and they went into the forest. Thankfully, being covered by forests, they survived, and the British discovered those. Indus Valley civilization was a discovery of the British. Indians had no clue about those things. So, what British basically did was that they wanted to make Indians see the concept of right and wrong, virtues and sins, using scriptures. Now, if you have discovered tens of books of Hinduism, you could always find some sentences here and there that could help them um, make Indians aware of virtues and sins and right and wrong. And I think that's what they pretty much did. In the 19th century, what is called Bengal Renaissance is started. And that was a product of enlightenment encouraged by the British. So, yes, I know people who have learned about Indian history through WhatsApp forwards, what we call WhatsApp University, will disagree with it. And most of these people will say, hey, go and read a book. Go and learn about history. And I absolutely guarantee you, Pratham, that a person who tells you to go and read a book or learn about history actually is clueless about history and has never read any book whatsoever, not just about historical books.
But aren't there some good lessons from Mahabharata or Ramayana, like when they say things like "do your duty regardless of the results"? Isn't that from the Hindu
Oh,
scriptures?
absolutely. And, there are some good things in there, but a broken clock is correct twice a day. So, if you have 1,000 pages of something, you will find something that is palatable to you. But that is because you have been rooted into a certain way of thinking using what I call Christianization of Hinduism. So you are looking for those things, so you see those things. But remember, Mahabharata and Ramayana have some absolutely crazy things. They went to Drona asking him to come, and he went with whosoever came to invite him to fight the war with him, irrespective of whether that side was right or wrong. The five brothers gave away their wife in a gamble, or you see something similar in Ramayana, that Ram left his wife because he suspected that she was with Ravan by will. So there's so many things which make you cringe about them. And so there are, of course, as I said, in a broken clock is perfectly correct twice a day, and in 1,000-page document you can certainly come across something that you agree with, but you see those things only because you have been Christianized in a certain way. Christianization of Hinduism took place in the 19th century. A lot of people who see those goodness in Gita and Mahabharata, and I read through those things and I liked those things, but they were anchored to certain values through in a missionary school mostly, or a product of missionary schools. Now they might not like missionary schools anymore, but that is where those values originally came from.
Uh, well, I'm agnostic, and I don't take religion too seriously, and I'm not that well educated in religion either. So, uh, these are some of the things that I constantly learn, the good things and the bad things. Uh, in India, I like going back to the elections. Uh, there is a lot of anti. There seems to be a lot of anti-incumbency against BJP, but despite that, Congress is failing to be a strong alternative, and they're failing to capitalize on this anti-incumbency. Why do you think that
Well,
is the
they have no
case?
leadership. Rahul Gandhi is not the most sophisticated person. Again, I think he is pretty much a product of having everything around yourself, and which I defined just a bit earlier. Having been grown up around wealth, which meant that he didn't really have to deal with the day-to-day life as it occurs in nature. He does not understand really in his heart what it is to be operating in the universe, because you grow up in a bubble and you live in a bubble. You think as if everything happens in that bubble. Now you can make yourself look very compassionate and tolerant by going on this padhyatra from one place to another and interacting with poor people, but you are still surrounded by 50 security guards. You have people who are looking after you all the time. You have your comforts around you. So I don't think he is competent enough, which does not mean Modi is any more competent. I think Modi is not only incompetent, he's ruthless. And that is where my biggest problem of India comes from, which is that India has no leadership left now. There's no one in India like, let's say, Manmohan Singh or Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Now, not that I admired either of these two leaders, but they were so much better than what we have currently. Remember, Pratham, this is the first time in the history of India that we have a prime minister who was born after the British had left. And I think this is a complete break from the British past, the past of sophistications, the past of having some class, and the past of fairness and justice. Those things are now all history. There was a time when I was growing up when, being sophisticated, having table manners, not using profanities was considered the right thing to do. These were the things looked up to. But now to be impressive, you use, all the bad words possible. You want to sound like a goon because the whole structure of what is sophisticated, what looks glamorous to us has changed. We are now interested in porn stars. I mean, India is probably the only country in the world where porn stars are celebrities. The strange shift has happened in the psyche of Indians, and I don't blame it all on Modi. I think the degradation of Indian psyche started the day the British left the country, or probably before that, when British decided that they were ready to leave the country.
Okay. Uh, ho- I pornography is banned in India. But but yeah, like you said, Indians are the one of the biggest consumers of pornography, and even in the West, and even in if you go even in East Asian countries, I believe in places like Thailand, porn stars and even sex workers are kind of celebrated. So doesn't that so why is India decaying so much? Isn't the West also in a way decaying?
Oh, West is decaying very rapidly, and West is decaying primarily because of import of a lot of people from the third world countries. Um, a lot of people have moved into the US, Canada, from Latin America, India. India provides among the most refugees to the first world today. Um, 27% of immigrants into Canada are from India. So the degradation of the West is happening because of the people from the third world. Um, uh, Now, I did not know that pornography was porn stars were that popular in Taiwan. I never heard of it. Elsewhere in
No, in Thailand,
Oh,
I meant in
but
Thailand.
Thailand is almost a third world country. Thailand is a much better, much nicer country compared to India, but Thailand is still a third world country, a second world country, and you should not have too many high hopes from Thailand either. But Thailand. All these things can happen in Thailand. East Asian countries, Taiwan, Singapore, Hong Kong, China, Japan, they are very clean places. There's cultural sophistication among those people. A lot of that was actually brought in to East Asia from the Western society. But again, Western society indeed is degrading, but mostly because of the lower class of the Western people. The people who divorce in the Western society, people who participate in this pornographic hedonistic lifestyles are mostly from the what I call the lower class of the Western society. But when Indians look at the West, all they see is the lower class of the Western society. So they don't look at the elite, the natural elite of the Western society. They don't even know who those natural elite are. They just copy the low class elements of the Western society, and that is why India is reverting back to its pre-colonial situation, which is going to be a very wild place when it once it eventually gets there.
But aren't a lot of Indians moving to the West, doctors and engineers? I heard like the data suggests that Indian Americans are the largest, are the highest earning people in the US. The average Indian American family earns more than 100K per year. So they must be doing something,
Okay,
right?
so firstly, there are two issues to do with that. One is, what does that mean for India? India is losing whatever good people it had. They are leaving the country very rapidly. So I fully understand that the people who are leaving the country are among its better people. The doctors are leaving, so you don't have good doctors left. You have engineers leaving, which means that you have just crappy engineers left in the country. In fact, if you want to go looking for plumbers and electricians, you could find those much more easily 10 or 15 or 20 years back, because the best ones have now left for Dubai and Abu Dhabi and elsewhere, because they have more places to go to. So, yes, uh, brain drain is happening with the country, and as a result, you when you go to a government office, the people you encounter are actually very brain dead. They are, corruption is only one thing, and most people in India will accept corruption as a part of life. But now you are also encountering people who are completely brain dead, who don't understand anything. Now, what does these people mean for, let's say, the United States? Now, yes, American families earn more than 100K in the US, but 100K that's there's nothing special about it. 100K is not a especially good income for the United States. And these are immigrants that have come to the US over the last 2 decades. Most of the Indians who have come to the United States are the cream of India, the scientists and engineers and IT people who moved to the US. So now, if they're making more than the average American, there's nothing big about it. The tail end of India moving to the US and making just above average is nothing surprising. Now, why don't you have Chinese in the same situation? Because the very best of Chinese return back to China. And if you look at the number of Chinese who now want to study in the US and return back to China, is actually increasing continuously. How many of these big companies, the IT companies that you know about in China, we have not. India has none of those kind of companies. All these companies, Tata Consulting Services or Infosys or Wipro, they are the back office working people. They are not really people who are operating at the cutting edge of technology or doing their independent thing. They're all working as back office slaves of Western companies. There's no future of them. And the best people from India want to stay outside India. But as you quite rightly said, they feel very proud of India. They are very attached to the Hindutva policies of Modi. Because at the end of the day, Pratham, Indians suffer from a very deep sense of inferiority complex.
Okay. Why are East Asian countries like China, Japan, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore doing well despite having similar characteristics and a similar start post decolonization? Despite that, despite a similar start, similar to India, sorry, why did they do much better?
Well, they have the culture of honor. They have the culture of respect. They have the culture of hard work. Indians don't have that culture. They have had it for a long time. If you do an honest work in India, people laugh at you. If you're honorable in India, people laugh at you. That is not the case with country Japan or Singapore or Taiwan and even China. Actually, people respect hard work. They respect quality, which is not the case with India. Um, Also, Indians are whiners. They will blame, if you tell them that, hey, India is such a backward country, they will say, hey, we have been independent only for 75 years. Yeah, but what were you doing for 75 years? These are 3 generations. uh, Japan was flattened by the US. The US had bombed Japan into non-existence. They built the whole country after getting flattened. And I go to Japan very often, Pratham, and I have never ever met a Japanese who blames America for anything. Uh, all the sufferings Japanese had. The same with Germans. Germany was flattened by the United States in the Second World War. They built themselves back up and they built themselves back better. And you ask a German if they blame America for anything, I have never ever heard anything like that. Uh, Africans, Indians, they are whiners. They blame other people for their backwardness, for their failures, because again, they don't have the culture of honor. They cannot accept self responsibility.
Now, why are East Asians more honorable than Indians? Do you think it has something to do with their religion? Is Buddhism a slightly better religion than Hinduism?
You don't really see Buddhism in East Asia. Now they might have Buddhist temples and they might go and pray to a Buddhist temple. This is the cultural fabric. This is the moral fabric that gets built over millennia, not over centuries, but over millennia. Uh, these were the people who have historically acted honorably, and they were in a position that they could absorb the Western values very quickly. Now, China might, politically go against the Western world, but Chinese people want to follow the Western ways of life because they know that those are the right things to do. You When I go to China, I see people fighting over their rights with the authorities, with the police. You go to you see them operating outside the Western society. They want to watch how Western people behave and want to copy those. They start lining up. They stop spitting on the road. They start acting honorably because they realize that those are the ingredients that go into making a civilization. What do Indians do? Try to take a flight out from Bangkok, for example. You will see drunk people who are hungover because they were in Bangkok for sex and drinking. Uh, they have no interest in how well Bangkok has changed over the last few years. Parts of Bangkok has actually become similar to Singapore in many ways. It is an attractive destination. I would go to, I could live in Bangkok any day. So this is the problem with Indians. They don't see good values. When you show them good values, they laugh at you because they think that you are being too saintly, too puerile, too unaccustomed to real life. So that's a big difference that East Asians value, honor, good values, virtues, and what is right.
Yeah, I was in Thailand last month and I went there alone and I avoided Indians because I felt a little embarrassed to be around Indians because I found two, Indian men just going near Thailand women and begging them for selfies and those women repeatedly saying no, no, no. And it's almost like these men didn't understand the concept of consent. They're saying no and they continued to embarrass themselves. So when I go to a foreign country, if there are a lot of Indians, I just go the other direction because I don't want the people of those country to judge me the way they judge other
Well, they
Indians.
will judge you because that's the perception that Indians have created in those countries, and they have created a very bad perception in those countries. You are 100% correct. Indian men are extremely pushy. Now, Indian women are not innocent either. They are just the other side of exactly the same coin. They lie all the time. They are cunning. They more than make up for the lack of physical strength by being emotionally manipulative. So Indian men and women are no different. And Indians have created a bad reputation in Thailand. Um, Thais actually don't like Indians, and that's why when I go to Thailand, I go there purely for business. I stay minimal time there, but I love the place because it's a very safe place for foreigners. People are very polite and nice to you, but you are 100% correct. Indians have created a bad reputation among them. But also, Indian social media people are creating a horrible reputation of Indians in the Western world today. The World Bank, the IMF, the Western countries are very euphoric about India. They want to create an image of India as if India is the second China. But at the same time, Indians are so rude. They abuse everyone on social media that increasingly the Western people are realizing that Indians are a problem for them.
Okay. Uh, do we need a leader like Lee Kuan Yew? Because you recently posted on Twitter that he was the greatest statesman of the modern times. Why do you believe that?
Because Lee Kuan Yew was a very clear thinking person, and he believed in what he thought. And he was not self-serving. He was there to for the benefit of his people, and he devoted his life for that. He took risks. He fought with Japanese. He fought with Malaysians, he fought with Indonesians. He created a structure in Singapore. And as I told you offline before we started the conversation, I lived in Singapore for a couple of years last decade. It's the best run country on the planet even today. He created a structure that was rational, that worked for the people of Singapore. That made him in my view, the by far the best statesman of the modern times. If you read his autobiography, you realize that he had a huge influence on Deng Xiaoping of China. He had a huge influence on Margaret Thatcher. He had huge influence on the politics of political leaders of the United States. So this guy had more influence than people think he had. Moreover, I think that he should have been appointed as the head of the United Nations, for example. He would have tried to sort out the problems that now, the Iran-Israel problems or Israel-Palestinian problems. He would have tried to solve those problems. Now, the question is, would a person like that have put India on the right path? I think India can be a lower grade Thailand at best, because that is the quality of its people. Indians simply does not have a skilled people. Indians simply are not driven people. Maybe the climate of India is oppressive, that doesn't give a vision and motivation to its people. Indians are very materialistic people. They don't have ideas. You can't excite people, Indians, with ideas. Indians are excited by a new gadget, a new television, a new show, a new watch, a new, something to show off. That's what excites Indians. So even a Lee Kuan Yew would have done a lot better than any other political leaders of India, but he would have brought India to, let's say, GDP per capita of $7,000 per year, which is similar to that of Thailand. But the GDP per capita of China is twice as much, and GDP capita of the United States is about 10 times as much. India can never, ever be China, and it can never, ever, of course, be the United States. That because it just does not have the quality of people to get there. And I think a realization and acceptance of that is very important if you want to start India on a path to improvement. Indians cannot be rocket scientists. Now I know India has sent a moon mission, but we're not talking about 5 or 10 or 20 people or 100 people of that country. We are talking about how to give jobs to hundreds of millions of Indians. Close to 40% of young people in India are unemployed. So you have to really think about those people. Moon mission is a facade. Moon mission is to distract you. It is Modi's way to fool you. So let's focus on what can get India going. And Lee Kuan Yew would have said, hey, let's improve agricultural policies and agricultural situation of the country. Let's start more mining in this country. Let's start doing more basic things that can bring jobs for hundreds of millions of people.
Okay. All right. What are your thoughts on the upcoming U.S. elections? It seems like it's mostly Trump versus Biden, maybe versus Robert F. Kennedy as well. What are your best hopes?
I'm still hoping that Trump wins the election. America really has to close its border with Mexico. They have to stop the inflow of immigrants into the United States, and they have to try their best to get rid of about 8 to 10 million people who have walked into the United States under the Biden regime. This is going to be disastrous for the US. Again, the Western countries are facing problems mostly because of uh, people of the third world who have moved into the Western world. And Trump is the only person who has some capability to stop this inflow. So I hope Trump wins, and I think the way things are moving, he might actually win. But at the same time, there is now a huge problem in the Middle East between Israel, Palestinian authorities, and Iran. And I hope that does not give justification to Biden to avoid having election in the US. But I hope Trump wins the election.
Is there any possibility of the end uh, in the ongoing Israel versus Palestine conflict or war?
I don't think so. The situation is very similar to what happened. It's very easy for Indians to understand this situation. You cannot put two teams of Indians on two sides of the table and let them come to a decision, because they will not discuss anything rationally. And if they come to a contract, they will not honor that contract. That is the basic instinct driving Indians. Uh, Most other people are capable of, most of the uh, people in the Western world and East Asian countries are capable of sitting across the table and coming to a resolution and then honoring that contract. Indians don't do that. The same is the case from what I see with Palestinians. They are incapable of honoring a contract. Israel gave them an opportunity to become independent, but the only thing that they have been fixated on has been on destroying Israel and Jews. So, however hard you try, you can't really have a contract, and a contract that stays accepted to both the sides as time goes by. So I don't see an end to that problem.
Is Israel completely right? Because it seems like what they're doing right now has some characteristics of a genocide with the killing of so many civilians.
You when see that is the message you have to drive across, and I fully agree that this is creating hardship for so many people. But these were the people who elected Hamas into power. Now, Israel is not, I'm not a big fan of many things to do with Israel, but in this situation, given what is started by the government, which was killing and rape of people within Israeli territory, encouraged by Hamas, was one of the worst things that has happened in the recent past by any government, which has so openly done these kind of atrocities and actually celebrated those. They drove around with these dead bodies of these naked women in Gaza, and clearly with the approval of the Hamas authorities.
Uh, you've been an investor in gold for many years. So this is a completely different tangent. And right now, the gold prices are increasing a lot. Do you think there is a rationale behind increasing gold prices, or do you think it's pure human emotion?
I don't even know why gold prices have gone up so much in the recent past. There's nothing that, in my view, triggered increase of gold price. Now I know a lot of governments, the federal banks of many countries, are actually acquiring more gold. But I'm just amazed by how rapidly gold price has gone up in the recent past. Um, uh, at the same time, Pratham, the world is becoming very unstable. You have a problem in the Middle East. There's increasingly more problem between the United States with China. The Ukraine-Russian war refuses to end. And the US is becoming weaker with time, which means that the third world countries are starting to fragment. Uh, what has been happening, for example, in India in the recent past, which is trying to send Rahul Gandhi to prison or sending the Aam Aadmi Party leaders to prison, is not something that would have happened in India if United States were strong. They would have used their whip to bring Modi to order. But United States is becoming increasingly weak, and that is creating a lot of chaos around the world. So I'm not surprised in a way, but this is thinking in retrospect. I could not have seen this. Gold price has done very well. although gold price did not do well for the last 2 or 3 years when inflation was so high. So gold price eventually had to catch up with inflation. And I'm talking about not just nominal inflation, but I'm also talking about negative interest rates. So gold price had to catch up with all these things eventually, and it is trying to catch up there.
Okay. With increasing polarization in India, like you mentioned, the arrest of Arvind Kejriwal of Aam Aadmi Party, with riots in places like Manipur in India, and with more and more Congress politicians joining BJP, people feel like there is no alternative. There is a lot of polarization, farmers' protests. Do you think that we could have a revolution or a civil war like situation? Do you think our country could even get split?
Well, India will eventually fall into pieces, no doubt about it. But there will never be a revolution in the country because Indians are sheepish. They don't fight. When the policeman stops them, they stop over, take off their pants, and bend over. That's how sheepish Indians are, and this is true across the board. Except that there are certain communities who have a slight tendency to fight back. Not a lot of tendency to fight back, but a slight tendency to fight back. And Indians go after those communities, and these are Muslims and Sikhs and people in the northeastern part of the country. They have some element of rebelling against authoritarianism of the government. But sheepish people don't like people to stand up, so they pull like lobsters. They pull everyone who wants to stand up for something down. There's no hope for a revolution in the country. I don't think Modi sees himself as ever sitting in the opposition. So he's trying very actively to destroy the opposition, which is really sad for India. Uh, 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 some people have already started saying that Modi might lose the election. I hope that really happens, not because the next party will be any better, but I just want this inertia of hooliganism that has started because of the BJP to end. And maybe something else will start with other parties, and that will happen. But at least this inertia must stop. Um, uh, so I don't see a revolution will happen. I think the decay of India will be very slow because things will just fall apart slowly because no one is there to actually create a revolution in the country.
All right. Yeah, that concludes the podcast. Thank you, Jayant, for providing us your opinions and your wisdom.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Pratham.